When my code throws runtime errors, I don't blame the user. I pull up the stack trace, inspect the codebase, and refactor the architecture until it works. Yet for years, I have watched people beat themselves up over personal finance. They build a spreadsheet, try to follow standard advice, and within 3 weeks, they are operating completely in the red. The problem isn't your discipline. The problem is that you are running legacy financial code on modern hyper-inflated hardware. The classic 50-30-20 budget was built decades ago. In today's economic system, it is fundamentally broken. Today, I am tearing down that outdated framework, refactoring it into a modern 55-20-25 system, and showing you how to build an automated financial pipeline that executes silently in the background. The legacy 50-30-20 system splits your net take-home pay into 3 basic buckets. 50% for needs: housing, utilities, groceries, healthcare, insurance, and minimum debt payments. 30% for wants: dining out, subscriptions, hobbies, and travel. 20% for savings: emergency funds, retirement, index funds, and debt payoff. On paper, the logic is elegant. In reality, it relies on economic conditions that no longer exist. I remember early in my tech career setting up my first elaborate financial spreadsheet, strictly hard coding that 50-30-20 allocation down to the cent. 2 weeks in, a sudden rent spike and an inflated electric bill threw my entire sheet into the red. I spent hours trying to debug my own discipline, tweaking formulas and cutting back on coffee before realizing the underlying logic itself was flawed. The system was broken, not me. First, housing costs blew past the 50% threshold. When Elizabeth Warren popularized 50-30-20 back in 2005, housing took up a significantly smaller fraction of average pay. Today, housing inflation has broken the math. Over 22 million renter households are officially cost-burdened. In cities like Miami, LA, or New York, median rent alone eats 35 to 37% of net take-home pay before you even buy a single grocery. When housing takes 40% of your income, keeping total baseline survival under 50% is mathematically impossible. Second, sticky baseline inflation. It isn't just rent. Groceries, auto insurance, energy, utilities, they have all hit permanent price hikes. Forcing basic survival costs into a rigid 50% container forces you to siphon money from savings or rack up high-interest credit debt just to cover the delta. Instead of fighting modern economic physics, we refactor the parameters based on your net take-home pay, your actual paycheck, after taxes. First, needs. 55%. The essential engine. By allocating an extra 5 percentage points to needs, we eliminate daily system friction. This gives your budget the breathing room it needs to absorb surging power bills and inflated grocery totals without crashing your entire system. What goes here? Rent or mortgage, utilities, basic transport, groceries, minimum required debt payments, and health coverage. Second, savings and wealth engineering, 20%, the non-negotiable core. Notice what I didn't touch. Never cut the 20% savings target. As a frugal hacker, my ultimate goal is long-term independence. Compounding interest is the highest yield efficiency hack in existence. What goes here? High-yield savings account emergency funds, 401k matches, Roth IRAs, and low-cost broad market index funds like VTI or VOO. Debt priority. If you carry toxic high-interest debt, like credit cards over 8% APR, prioritize paying that down within this 20% bucket before funding taxable brokerage accounts. Third, wants, 25%, controlled discretionary spend. To balance the extra 5% going to survival needs, we trim discretionary spending from 30% down to 25%. We make a conscious trade-off on lifestyle creep while leaving enough room to enjoy life without burning out. What goes here? Dining out, streaming services, travel, gaming hardware, gadgets, and coffee. If you live in San Francisco, Seattle, or New York, spending 55% on needs might still feel tight. Rent alone can swallow 50% of your net pay. When your environment forces needs up to 65%, deploy the high cost of living override patch. 65% needs, 20% savings, and 15% wants. Protect the wealth target. Keep your savings at 15 to 20% no matter what. Dropping savings to zero keeps you permanently trapped in a paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. Compress discretionary. If needs eat 65%, wants dynamically shrink to 15%. That's the trade-off for living in a high-amenity metro. Deploy system geohacks, split overhead with house hacking, renegotiate remote work terms, or optimize your tax residency. I still remember the exact morning I eliminated financial management friction entirely. I set up my first automated paycheck split script using a self-hosted Firefly 3 instance running on a Raspberry Pi sitting in my closet. The following Friday morning, I sat back and watched my paycheck hit, and within seconds, it automatically routed into 3 distinct buckets without me touching a keyboard. That was the exact moment my financial anxiety completely vanished. Relying on manual tracking and willpower is a design failure. I treat every paycheck like an incoming data stream that gets parsed and routed automatically. To run this setup, drop the manual entry and use actual software. Zero-based budgeting engines. Tools like YNAB or Monarch Money assign every dollar a job instantly through live bank API syncs. Self-hosted tools. If you hate subscription SaaS fees and want complete data privacy, self-host actual budget or Firefly 3 on a local home server or Raspberry Pi using Docker. Set up your bank accounts to run this precise workflow on payday. Direct deposit split. Configure your payroll portal to route 20% directly into an HYSA or brokerage account before it hits your main checking account. What you never see, you never spend. Automated bill pay for 55%. Needs. Autopay all recurring fixed bills, rent, utilities, insurance, directly out of your primary checking account 24 to 48 hours after payday. The wants sandbox for 25%. Discretionary auto-transfer your 25% allocation to a separate debit card or account. When that balance hits zero for the month, discretionary spend stops cold. No manual tracking required. Budgeting isn't a moral test. It's just resource allocation under constraints. The legacy 50-30-20 framework failed because the underlying economic environment changed. Refactor your finances into the 55-20-25 framework based on your net income. Align your spending with reality, protect your future self, and write the automation scripts to run it all in the background. Stop fighting broken code. Upgrade your financial OS today.